very important that if you're stepping into a new area, if you are looking to create exponential results in your life, that you remove limitations, you remove the thought process of restriction and comparison. I was having a client call today. I do a lot of transformational work for good clients of mine, helping them get out of their own way to accomplish the life that they want to actually live. And a big conversation that we had today was, hey, we want to set this goal. The client wanted to set a goal of reaching 10K in savings in 3 months from now. So the question then goes from there, which is, number one, why were we wanting to make that 10K? What was the reason? What's the motivation? From that point, when we understand the why in my client's context, we then asked, what if we had no restriction, if we had no limitation, how would we ideally want to go about making that 10K? If we had no restriction, if we didn't have any limitation, what would be the most ideal way where not only we could lead with our biggest passion, but we could go larger and think bigger? How could we do that would result in us making that 10 grand in savings, which would require you to make more after taxes and expenses, to where not only you're moving the needle forward with your career, you understand your why, and you're also hitting your financial goals. And what that had led us to start thinking about was actually thinking bigger. It wasn't, hey, I want to have 10K in savings, doing it this way because this is what I thought was the only way. It was, hey, if we remove those limitations and we could actually go ahead and do this in the way that you really want to, if you had no need to actually fulfill this area and you didn't have any expectation in this area, what would you actually do and how would you actually do it? And that complete shift in paradigm and thinking started allowing my client to think bigger and think more expansive in his thoughts. And that brings me to the idea of this video, which is, if you want to think outside the box, if you want exponential results, you have to remove the limitations that you set on yourself, right? And paradoxically, it does help to actually set certain parameters to get you to think different as well. And there's a beautiful balance between those two, which is, number one, we're removing expectations of how we thought it had to be. And number two, we can put in paradigms and we can put in certain conditions that will allow you to think differently as well. For example, hey, we don't have to do it, let's say, the way you thought you had to make the money through what you're already doing in your career. But if we were to do it in 3 months and make this much amount of money in whatever way possible. So as you can see, I set a limitation in 3 months, but then I also opened the level of possibility in saying it doesn't have to just be this way. How would you want to do it? What would that look like? How big would you have to think in order to do it? And those questions allowed a different level of thinking to come through. Because in this world, if we have goals and we have certain things we want to do, why wouldn't we want to do it in a way that aligns the most with how we want to live? And that's an interesting question. The answer, the only reason why we wouldn't actually do it is because of limiting beliefs. Oh, well, I don't think I could do it. Doing that thing, it probably won't make me as much money, probably blah, blah, blah. And all these reasons and belief systems will come up. And that's the beauty in where you can get to actually pull them up to the surface and start challenging and questioning them. Because I guarantee that there's been so many different ways out of the expected, box of how to do things that have actually been pulled off to where people got results. I mean, look at most creative people on a grand scale. A lot of people who are pioneers in their creative industry didn't really think with limitations. They actually expressed fully. But to get to that point, they had to open the horizon of possibilities. They had to place less restriction on what should be and had to be. They actually allowed themselves to step into what's possible. So what I'm trying to say here is that how can we get you to think, and how can we get my client to think, as an example, to where we have less restriction, we know what we want, we know why we want it. For example, 10 grand in savings in 3 months, which required us to actually go ahead and make more within that time frame. But also, how can we think bigger and think more long term and more in alignment with actually how we want to live in order to achieve that? Then you can start asking questions. So the homework I gave to my client, which you can also use as inspiration, is, hey, Go set aside a time. Put on nice thinking music if you have to, similar to the music I've got in the background right now, and go just allow your brain to wonder. Hey, what if I could do it like this? What if I could do it like that? Right? What would that actually require from me to go ahead and do that? Would I have to go speak to this person, speak to that person? How can I pull some strings, leverage this, leverage that? Get you to start thinking that way and write ideas down with no limitations. That's how you can start allowing creativity to come in. But for these creative ideas to come in, you have to then empty first. So there's room for the creative ideas to come through. Most of the time, we fill up that emptiness with preconceived ideas of how things have to be, and we don't allow space for the new and creative ideas to come in. And that's why a lot of people, they don't usually achieve exponential results, because they're playing within a small game, a small limited confined box of how they thought it had to be. But what if it doesn't have to be that? What about the people who move the needle forward in a completely different and unexpected way, but it resulted in completely amazing, profound, high leverage, exponential results? What if you could do the same? Some questions to get you thinking. Don't be so narrow-minded. Let's start thinking bigger, start thinking different. We got one life. And a question I would like to ask my client is, which path would you regret not doing more? That can give you some clues as you navigate this journey. Hope it helps.